name is Success Smith. I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and today we're going to be talking about a subject that affects everyone: students, non students, parents, as an adult, as a person. It affects everyone, but we don't really know how to manage this. So, we're going to be learning about stress, learning about how stress can manifest, types of stress, and then we're going to be learning how to manage our stress levels, by ourselves. So, I don't know if anyone is excited. I need to see reactions. Let me send in my own reaction. Um, yeah, I can see Dr. Lambert. I love your moves. Okay. So you guys can just let me see your reactions, put it in the chat. How do you feel today? Are you excited? I know this is not the first time for many people here seeing me. So are you happy to see me? Are you happy to learn about the subject? Great, 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 great. Everyone is excited. Lovely, lovely.
Bartholomew, Michael, Tanisha, you can see all of their little celebrations going up.
Yay! The clapping, the celebrations. Thank you so much, everyone. It shows we're in a good mood and, we're doing very well. Great to see. Thanks, Dr. Lambert. Your energy is like at 800. I love it. Thank you. Okay, thanks, everyone. Okay, so let's just get into it, right? So, today we're going to be looking at stress related disorders. We're going to be looking at stress, the signs and symptoms, disorders that are like types of stress disorders. And basically, we're going to be learning tips on how to manage our stress by ourselves. We're going to know what we can do for ourselves in terms of self management and at what point should we seek help. So it's going to be an interesting class today. I hope everyone is excited. So I don't know. Okay. Before we get into the crux of the topic, let's break the ice. So, what would you say? I mean, everybody here is an adult. We face stress. In fact, some people might even be feeling stressed right now. So, what would you say is your favorite stress buster? What do you do to manage your stress levels? Right? And I want someone to speak up, put it in the chat. I want a very interactive, class today. What do you do to manage your stress? For one, for me, I try to get sleep when I feel that I'm very, very stressed, and I'm experiencing the signs and the symptoms. I try to make time for sleep so that my body can rest, my mind can rest. So what do you do? What's your unique, little strategy that helps you manage your stress levels? Okay, someone says, Althea. I'm sorry if I'm not getting the pronunciation. Someone says, I listen to music and pray or work. Fantastic. Those are very good. Someone says, I sing. Excellent. You guys love music here, and I'm loving it, right? Sleep, listen to music. I stop working. Excellent. You take a break when you see that you're feeling stressed and you listen to music, helps you relax. Someone says reading. Oh my God, reading is excellent. It removes you from this current stressful reality and takes you somewhere that is imaginative, is beautiful. You're following the story. Someone says, I play Scrabble. I mean, Scrabble is fun, so I know. And take a nap, really good. Watch movies, excellent. I go for sports, excellent. Exercise, sports, excellent way to manage stress. Yeah. So I love the replies. I mean, it means that we know a thing or two about managing stress, or at least doing something that works for us. So this is excellent. Great, great, great. Great to learn about everyone's, stress buster and how it works for them. So let's just get into, the matter. First of all, what is stress? As I'm speaking, you can put in your comments, your questions, or anything you want to say in the chat, and then we'll just read it so that we can go through the slides before, so there's no distractions. So, stress of all is a very normal reaction, right? Stress can be good or bad, but doesn't make it bad all the time. Stress is a psychophysiological response, meaning that it is not just a physical response to a perceived threat or a stressor. It is also psychological, right? And we're going to learn about why this is so. So it is a psychophysiological response to a perceived threat or a stressor, right? A stressor could be anything. A stressor could be, a person, a place, an object, an event, a task, right? And this stressor tax or exceeds an individual coping resources. So another thing we're learning is that, stress can be good, but when it exceeds our, individual coping resources, it gets really bad. So stress is not merely a feeling, it's a full body state of mobilization, right? So basically, stress is just a change, an event, a person, an object, a thing, a fact, could be a thought, could be your emotion that just takes you out from your normal rest mode, and then it's something that moves you, you're unable to manage it at a certain point in time. So stress is natural, it's normal. Stress can be good or bad. Stress occurs and our body, our mind responds to it, and our body responds to it as well. And stress can be bad when it exceeds our coping resources, when we're no longer able to cope with it. Okay, so now let's look at, different types of stress. The first one is eustress. Eustress is the good stress, or that's how we perceive it, right? It's a positive stress that is perceived as a challenge. I mentioned earlier that stress can be good or bad, right? So we're learning about them. Eustress is the good stress, it's the positive stress. It comes as a challenge, it gingers us, it motivates us to take an action, right? It enhances our performance, keeps us focused, keeps us energized in order to achieve something, right? And as we're students here, it could be that rush that helps you present and finish a presentation. Imagine this, right? You have a paperwork to present, on a Zoom meeting with your class, and then someone presents before you, and you realize that this person did such a good job in their research, their work, their presentation was excellent. That kind of puts some expectations on you to be as good as that person or even exceed that person's performance, right? So we call that good stress. It's taking you from your normal plans or your normal presentation mode, if you can put it as that, into something that challenges you, increases your focus, helps you think better in order to improve your performance or help you achieve something, right? Other examples are the butterflies you feel right before a first date. Right, you're already expecting to meet someone, but maybe you see the person for the first time, and then you feel the butterflies in your stomach. It changes the state of your body from the normal relaxed state to a state that just helps you be better, do better, be more engaged, be more present, and enjoy the date or anything it could be. It could also be the adrenaline before a sports competition. Like someone mentioned, they play sports when they feel stressed, right? You're on the field about to start a match. The familiar feeling of, the good way you feel when you're about to work out, when you're about to exercise, or you start anticipating scoring a goal or doing something spectacular, right? When you feel that way, when you feel that kind of stress, the eustress, it helps you feel more focused, more energized. You're able to think better, strategize to perform better. Or as students, it could be the focus pressure of your final project, right? The feeling that you need to prepare well, do your work well, present well. That's eustress. It's a good stress. It shakes you from your normal way of presenting or being into a more enhanced way that makes you better. Basically, it increases your focus, it enhances your memory, and then it provides that spark, that motivation that helps you take action. I hope everyone can hear me. Okay, I can see a thumbs up. Great. So eustress is a good stress, right? Now let's learn about the bad stress. It's called distress. Distress. Eustress, good stress. Distress, bad stress. And what is it exactly? It's just a negative stress that is perceived as a threat. I mentioned in eustress, it is positive because it gives you the spark to take action, to do something, to be better. Eustress, or the bad stress, is a threat. It's perceived as a threat, right? It comes as an overwhelming feeling, makes you feel exhausted, and it could result in physical and mental illness if prolonged, right? Let's look at an example. One is constant financial worry. Financial worries stick with you, right? It's not like a one-time thing. Oh, you're worried about finances and that's it. You move on to the next thing. Unlike eustress, when eustress comes, it's like, oh, you need to take an exam or you need to present your paperwork or something like that. It's a good stress. You perform it, you do well, and then the stress goes. It's a good stress. It keeps you feeling better. But when distress happens, it is continuous, right? It affects different aspects of your life. If you're worried about finances, for instance, it will affect your performance in school, affect your relationship with people, affect your relationship with yourself. You don't feel happy, you're less likely to do the fun and interesting things that you would normally do, right? You feel down, you feel sad, hopeless, and all of that, right? Or it could be in a toxic relationship. We all know how it feels, right? Or maybe we've observed this. There is no You are in constant distress, you're in constant emotional distress. You don't feel relaxed, you don't feel your best, you don't perform your best, you don't feel focused, you're overwhelmed by the toxicity, or the worries or doubt or whatever, right? Or it could be failing your some courses in your exams, right? Or even being bullied in class. When you're bullied, you don't feel enhanced, you don't perform better. In fact, it reduces you, it takes from you as a person. It is a bad stress. So we can call it distress or emotional distress. In clinical terms, we refer to it as emotional distress. It's a bad stress and it leads to anxiety, sleep disturbances. If you're always stressed out, you won't be able to focus, you won't be able to get enough sleep, you have difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, and it could lead to physical illness. So we'll learn more about the physical manifestation of bad stress. Next we look at oh sorry Okay, next we look at hyperstress, right? Or overstress. This occurs when a person is being pushed past their limits, right? And it is the precursor to burnout. For instance, a student working two jobs to take 18 credits, right? Let me just explain this. In this case, let me just check if everyone can still hear me. I hope everyone can still hear me. You can just give me a thumbs up. Okay, thank you. So in the case of hyper stress, it could even start as a good stress. For instance, you're a student and you're working two jobs while taking a high credit load because you feel like, oh, at the start, it could start as a good stress because you're pushing yourself beyond your normal performance. You're doing something you've never done before. It could start good. You could be excelling. You could be, doing your two jobs and going to school and everything works better. Your grades are good and all of that, but over time, it pushes you beyond your limits. You're unable to get your rest. You're unable to go back to your normal state before the stress comes in, and then it leads to burnout, right? Or even a sudden family crisis during finals week that you've been preparing for all semester. You've gotten your notes, you're prepared to read and all of that. Then, like a sudden family crisis happens, it changes you from your normal state, from the good stress you were in, and takes you to bad stress, and then it becomes so bad and it leads to overstress because you are unable to cope with your exams where you would normally perform good as you've planned. You're unable to cope with that, and then it leads to burnout. You're unable to focus, study, or even get good grades in your exam. The next is hypostress, right, which is under stress. I think this is an error, right? So for hypostress, it's the stress of boredom or the lack of a challenge, right? Which could lead to a decrease in your mental well-being. So let me explain this, right? So let's say you are in a major that doesn't really interest you, right? Maybe it's something that you are naturally good at, right? You can study and go sit for the exams and still perform well, but you don't feel challenged, you don't feel excited, right? What does that do? It drops your motivation, it makes you feel bored, you don't feel like you're being challenged or put to your best, and it could lead to a decline in your mental well-being, it could affect your mood and all of that. And I think the last one here is new stress, which is the neutral stress, right? Here, the stressor happens, but it does not affect you directly or significantly. For instance, reading about like a natural disaster in like a distant country, maybe in Asia, you read about an earthquake in Japan, right? It's a change, right? It's a new information, and you start to imagine what it could look like the casualties, the destructions, and all of that, but it doesn't necessarily affect you directly or change anything about you. It's just something that it's a temporary stress, right? Or like a minor change in the university's building layout. This type of stress, you easily resolve it without it affecting you. You're like, hey, there's a new layout in the campus, I can easily get a map and just deal with it. So yeah, it has happened, and it doesn't cause any, it doesn't have any bad impact on you or your state of being. So I hope everyone is following. I'd love to see your thumbs up. um Okay, thank you. So there's a biological core, of stress. When you encounter stress, your body initiates a cascade known as the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal. It's called the HPA axis, and I don't know if everyone here kind of understands, biology. I don't know if everyone's a biology major here, but we know about hormonal glands, the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and what they do, the adrenal glands, and all of that. But basically, all these glands are functional in the HPA axis that kind of breaks down the way our body perceives and reacts to stress. So let me just hurry to the signs and symptoms, right? So chronic activation of the HPA axis leads to something called allostatic load that leads to the wear and tear of the body. So it means that when we constantly put ourselves in stressful situations, we are not able to manage the stress, that's the bad stress, properly, or we face hyper stress, or we face hypo stress, and it continues over time without proper management. It could lead to wear and tear of the body, and we're going to learn how. First is the physical manifestation, and I know that if not everybody here, at least 90% of the people here on this call have experienced this, or are even experiencing it, or have experienced it recently. Right, let's talk about autonomic arousal. Basically, your autonomic system, you start feeling palpitations, shallow breathing, excessive sweating. I don't know if anyone can put some more signs that they might have experienced in the chats. Okay. In terms of the physical manifestation, there's like excessive sweating on the body. Some people have like excessive sweating on their palms. Some people get like they lose their breath and they need to take a minute to calm down. Some people face like okay, so they fall under some other signs here, which we'll also talk about. Let's talk about somatic complaints, right? There's like tension, headache. A lot of people feel headaches at the front of their head or at the sides of their head when they feel chronic stress and then they don't manage it, right? There's also the gastrointestinal issues that we face, nausea, cramps, right? Let me tell you something funny. So I know someone who's really, really close to me, and whenever she wants to take an exam, no matter how well she prepares for the exam, her body always reacts to that stress, and she has like cramps and like a lot of diarrhea, right? Even if she had eased herself just recently, like 20 minutes to getting into the exam hall, she starts feeling the tension and all of that, and then she gets cramped, she has to go to the toilet. Like, it just changes her entire, body system, and then she experiences all the symptoms. There's also like muscle tightness, especially on our feet, in our arms, on our sides. Whenever we feel stressed, some people feel like some cramps, tightness, or even pain on their backs, when they feel stressed. First thing you'd know is like your eyebrows start to arc, because you're feeling stressed. There's also sleep disruption, which is a very, very major symptom of stress, where you experience difficulty falling asleep, even if it's just easy for you to just close your eyes. I know there are some people that they find it so easy to fall asleep, even if they're in a noisy environment. They just need to sit down and tilt their head and they go to sleep. But then how do they react when they face chronic stress, right? They have difficulty falling asleep, have difficulty relaxing their body, or staying asleep. Even if they fall asleep within 2 hours deep into the sleep, they wake up at night, because their body is still in distress, and they wake up with a racing mind, overwhelmed with the stress, the worries, or whatever it is that is stressing them out at that moment. There's also the cognitive and behavioral signs, right, which one affect our executive functions, like our memory, our decision making, and things like that. And I don't know if anyone has noticed, when you feel very, very stressed, you find it hard to recall things that have happened, even if it happened like most recently, right? Like, maybe you just saw your friend and you even complimented them on their hair, for instance, and then when you go into a situation that stresses you out, you can't recall, the compliments that you made, or you find it very, very difficult to concentrate. You're easily spacing out, you can't focus on one thing, right? The sounds you hear in your ear, you can't filter out the sound, and you feel very overwhelmed, right? There's also the procrastination, which I also am very, very guilty of. Especially when I'm dealing with distress, emotional distress, if you remember what we talked about, right? That is the bad stress. I find it very easy to procrastinate, right? Because I don't want to deal with it at that very moment. I believe that the more I put it off, the easier it could get for me. But everybody knows here that that doesn't really happen. Right? It's just a trap that our mind tries to deceive us to get away from the stress at the moment. You believe that the more you procrastinate and put it off, you'd be in a better position. You'd be able to sleep more, be in a better mood to work on it. And at the end of the day, that could get you in trouble. That is one of the signs that that's a stressful situation. Or you could find yourself doom scrolling on your phone. You're just on your socials and you're just watching videos on and on and on, and you can't even recall the last video you watched, right? That is a cognitive, symptom of stress. Or then for some people, they tend to use substances, right? They tend to take cigarettes, use alcohol, or maybe other unhealthy substances to cope with their stress. When you see that, you feel that overwhelming urge to get away from your current reality or the current stressor that you're feeling, that should let you know that right now you're under a lot of stress and you need to take care of yourself. There's also the emotional liability part, where you feel very, very irritable, highly irritable. This affects men and women a lot, right? You feel very, very irritable when you're very stressed, or you have a feeling of impending doom. And this happens especially when it's like a big task or something that you don't feel prepared for. You have like great anxiety for, like an exam. Even if you've prepared, you have all your notes, you have your continuous assessments, you've done very well, and you have a high chance of passing that course with flying colors, you still feel like you might fail, right? That's like one of the symptoms. That's something that tells you that, hey, this is like a very stressful situation for me. I need to take a step back and take care of myself before I get into the situation. So now let's talk about some stress related disorders. I don't know if everyone can see this clearly. I hope we can still see my screen.
No, actually, no, not yet. I don't. Looks like you'll have to
Okay, let me
share your screen
reshare.
again.
Yeah, just give me a moment. Okay, so just let me know once you can see it.
Not yet. I don't see anything. Does anybody see the screen? The PowerPoint
Okay,
presentation?
it's loading.
Oh, it's loading.
It's loading on my end, but I want to quickly put in the PowerPoint in the chat. So if anyone wants to like follow looking at the slides as I speak, that would be perfect. Just a minute. Okay, so if you have your laptops, you can just open the slides and just follow the presentation. That would be great. So let me reshare my screen now. Okay. So I hope everyone can see it.
I do not see it yet. Oh, something. I think I see
Oh,
it coming up now.
is it coming up now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Don't see it yet. It's still kind of loading up. Now I see it. Does anybody else see it?
Okay.
Okay.
I hope everyone can see it now. Or if you can't see it, you can just like open the slides on your device and we could follow, right? So now we're going to talk about some stress related disorders. And the first is adjustment disorder. If you've heard about adjustment disorder, you can just quickly put in what you heard about it or what you think it is in the chat, right? And I'll just get to it. So, adjustment disorder is an excessive emotional or behavioral reaction to an identifiable stressor, right? So, two things. One is, like I mentioned before, stress is like a natural reaction to a stressor. But in the case of adjustment disorder, it becomes very excessive and it's manifests in our emotional and our behavioral states. And I'll explain that, right? But then the second point is there has to be an identifiable stressor. It could be a life change, starting school, finishing school, starting a new job, starting a family, or a loss, like loss of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of something really, really important to you, or even a life transition, right? Transitioning from being a student into the workforce, or the non-student into a student, or changing schools, or changing your major, or something like that. And this has to happen within 3 months of the stressors, right? So we have to notice this excessive or emotional or behavioral reactions within 3 months of the stressors. So that's just saying if you experience a major change or major transition or a major loss in your life, and you've noticed that you have like you're finding it really, really difficult to adjust to this, it could indicate that you're going through an adjustment disorder. But in this case, the reaction is more intense than a normal reaction would be, right? We know that if we lose someone, we're going to grieve, and that could affect us for a long time. But then in this case, we grieve so intensely, we're unable to function, we're unable to resolve our grief, to move on. It becomes so intense, more intense than it normally would be, right? And some of the symptoms are sadness, hopelessness, anxiety, irritability, difficulty sleeping, It also affects our appetites, right? We can undereat or overeat during this period. It affects our concentration and our focus. And you find that people that experience adjustment disorders tend to withdraw from activities that they would usually enjoy, right? Within 3 months of the major life change happening. It's very, very common in students, which is why I picked this as the first disorder that I'll be talking about. Because as students, no matter the level you're in, if you're an undergrad, you're a master's student, you're a PhD student, you're going through some sort of life change or transition. And it can be very, very difficult to adjust or manage ourselves during that period. So it commonly affects students and young adults facing life transitions, affects about 5 to 20% of even mental health outpatients, as people who have probably been admitted for a mental illness and then or even a physical illness, and then they've been in the hospital for like a week or more. That kind of changes you, and then you get used to a completely different system of working in the hospital, and then you get discharged and go back home. You get bored. You might find it really, really difficult adjusting to the changing environment, right? It could cause emotional distress. Remember, emotional distress is the bad stress, right? It could also cause behavioral changes, like the symptoms we mentioned. Irritability is a huge behavioral change, your change in appetite. It could also impair your social and academic or occupational functioning. Something very, very common is when we tend to get a new job, it takes us some time to get used to it. But I think it takes about 3 months in the corporate world for like your probation period to be over. And during that probation period, you're expected to understand your transitioning, your new role, fix your life so that you can basically, work and get a balance in your life and work. And after that period, you're expected to have adjusted fine and start performing brilliantly at your role. But then when you're unable to now adjust to that, you're unable to function the way you would normally function, it could indicate, right, that you're going through an adjustment disorder. The next one is generalized anxiety disorder. This is actually very, very common. GAD is so common. It's one of the most common forms of anxiety, and a lot of people experience it. So, in this case, generalized anxiety disorder is a persistent and excessive worry about so many things in life, multiple areas in life. The thing about anxiety is that it could be like a specific anxiety, like a targeted anxiety towards certain things, like specific phobias like hydrophobia and things like that. Or it could be around about so many things in life. In the case of generalized anxiety disorder, you're worrying too much about so many things. Oh, my work, my family, my school, my grades, my life. You're unable to get a grip. You're just continuously worrying about so many things that you can't even put a finger on, right? And it's difficult to control, and this can last for more than 6 months, right? The worry is disproportionate to the actual threats, right? So does it make sense for us to worry for more than 6 months about, like, school, for instance? After 3 months, you're expected to be adjusting, right? And to have stopped worrying and found a way to resolve it. But then after that period, you're still worrying, you're unable to relax, you're still restless, you still feel tired, you're overthinking. That could mean that you're going through generalized anxiety disorder, because you're unable to put your finger on one specific thing that you're worried about. You're worried about everything, and it doesn't match. The worry does not match the whatever it is that you're worried about, right? Why are you worried for 6 months plus about transitioning into a new major when you had prepared your mind, made your decision to change? So why are you still worried about it? After 3 months, you should be okay, right? So if it gets more than that, you know that there could be an issue there. Some of the symptoms are, like I mentioned, restlessness, fatigue. You're always tired, especially when you think about these things, right? There's the mental tiredness as well. You're unable to focus, to concentrate. You're highly irritable. A lot of people face muscle tension. You can just find out that some parts of your body are just aching, like your fingers, your back, your waist. It's just aching, or you feel very stiff muscles by your sides or in your arms or any parts of your body. You're unable to sleep well, you're overthinking, you're catastrophizing. You believe that the worst will eventually happen, right? And this affects high achievers and people that refer to themselves as perfectionists. And I want someone to put in the chat why you think high achievers and perfectionists are people that, face generalized anxiety disorder more, right? I think it's self-explanatory, but I want to hear our own unique ideas. Why do you think a perfectionist would likely experience generalized anxiety more than a regular person, right? So put it in the chat. Let's hear your thoughts. Sorry. Okay. Um, it affects women two times, like twice more than it affects men. I want to know your ideas. Why do you think it affects women more than it affects men? Right? And this can also develop in childhood or adulthood. Anybody can develop this, right? There's the constant what if thinking, right? What if questioning? What if this happens? What if it doesn't happen this way? What if it happens this way? What if it doesn't work, right? You're constantly questioning yourself to the extent that you even feel like physical tension, right? You also have avoidance behaviors. You withdraw yourself from things that you would normally do, right? You're a sports person. You suddenly don't feel like going to sports anymore because you're always worried. Yeah, and there's also the hypervigilance. You're suspicious, you're looking around, worried that something might happen, right? So it is a long-term condition that requires constant, like, ongoing management. And generalized anxiety disorder can affect your daily functioning. If you're worried excessively for more than 6 months, you're definitely not going to perform the way you would normally do when you're not worried, right? And it could occur with depression, right? They could co-occur. The next is PTSD. I know that PTSD is actually very, very popular, right? Many people have an idea what PTSD is, right? So, yeah, so I want us to put our ideas in the chat box. I want to know your thoughts. Yeah. Alvin says perfectionists hate failure and they expect everything to excel. you know Consequences, they're always under. Okay, they're always worried about consequences. Like I said, what ifs, they're always bombarded with what if it doesn't happen this way, what if it happens this way, right? What if it doesn't go as planned? And this puts them under some very immense pressure because they are trying to control everything. But realistically, and as we learn more about how to manage our stress, we realize that you can't control everything, right? In life, you can't control everything, and we're encouraged to focus on what we can control, and resolve what we cannot control. Thank you so much. That's really good. Chi or Chair, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Someone says because they want to get everything at 100%. Yes, and when they find it difficult in achieving 100%, they don't feel satisfied or fulfilled. You know, and I know this is very, very common among. I don't want to be biased, but the data says it affects women twice as more than men. But if we notice, especially the older women in our families, this period is like the Yuletide. It's a seasonal celebratory period. So we know that the women they want to be, on top of everything in the house, like the domestic things. Even the men, they want to make sure that finances are sure, everything is fixed, refurbished, and all of that. And they want to control everything. So they find themselves drained in trying to make everything so perfect that they may not even enjoy, the celebrations, right? Because they are trying to make everything perfect. Someone says for women, it's normal because they combine professional life with their family responsibility, which is actually difficult to handle. So, yeah, that's a good point why it affects women more than men. Yeah, someone also says women have more responsibilities, especially in countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan. You know that when it's a religious period, there's going to be a lot of, running around, a lot of pressure, and they want it to be perfect. Even if it's already perfect, it's even sometimes difficult to convince them that, hey, you've done a good job. Take some time to rest. They might want it their way all the time. So that might make them, very, very stressed. Thank you. That's so good. So, post traumatic stress disorder, you can put in the chat what you feel, what you think post traumatic stress disorder is. And now it happens. It is a severe condition following like exposure to like adverse things like death or serious injury or even violence, and like types of violence like sexual violence, right? And in this case, the person experiences the trauma, right? Or they try their possible best to avoid anything that could remind them of the trauma they've experienced. It could also lead to negative mood changes and hyper arousal. Some of the symptoms are flashback, nightmares, intrusive thoughts, avoidance of trauma reminders, emotional numbness, hypervigilance, exaggerated startle response. Let me explain this. One group of people that it affects a lot are veterans, that is ex-soldiers. Why? Because they have been on the war front, they've been exposed to war, and they've seen a lot of graphic things like death, violence, gunfights, bombings. They've watched their teammates go down, and it's like it gets so real, of serious injury, like someone being in an explosion and they lose a limb or something like that. The average person hasn't witnessed that. I haven't seen that, and I'm sure the average person hasn't, right? Or people in countries that have experienced war, for instance, and maybe they've lost a loved one or they've been displaced. 1 minute everything is okay, and the next minute you've lost almost everything you have. That's the traumatic experience. And then PTSD occurs. Some of the symptoms are, flashbacks. The person keeps having flashbacks of the traumatic event, right? Or in their sleep they keep having nightmares of how the trauma happened. They keep reliving that situation, or even when they feel like they want to move on, they keep having intrusive thoughts that just seep into their mind and just takes them back to the trauma that has happened. Or some people try to take control by avoiding it. They don't want anything that could remind them. They try to filter their lives to be clean of anything that could take them back. But is this always feasible? The best way is to manage it, not to avoid it, right? Or emotional numbness. Some people could just stop feeling altogether. Some people could even lose their empathy. That is the regular empathy that we're expected to have for our normal, daily, regular people that we encounter in daily life, because of the trauma they've experienced. It also affects assault survivors, people who have survived, violence, abuse, sexual abuse especially, or people who have witnessed an accident in real life, right? Some of the manifestations is it activates our amygdala, overactivates our brain's fear center. It could lead to memory impairment and loss of our emotional control. Yeah, so you can put in the chat any experience you've had, that you think could match what we just explained about PTSD. Let me just go through the rest. The next one is acute stress disorder. Acute stress disorder, I'm sure everybody has experienced it, right? um it's an intense acute stress reaction that occurs within 3 days to 1 month after traumatic exposure. So let me just add that for PTSD, it's I think 3 months and more and above. But for acute stress, acute means just within a short period of time, right? So an instant reaction. So within 3 days to 1 month after the traumatic event has happened, right? And if it's untreated, it could lead to PTSD. PTSD is prolonged, it's persistent, it's after a long time, while acute is like within the period of the trauma, right? It could lead to stuff like dissociation, right? It could lead to flashbacks, avoidance. It could put you in a negative mood. For instance, you just witnessed an accident, right? You're just walking on the street and then an accident happens and somebody gets very, very injured, right? You could dissociate. Like you could mentally remove yourself from your physical situation just as a way of dealing with what you just saw, right? um it could also lead to hyperarousal and sometimes difficulty in remembering the details of the traumatic event. If you notice, people that read books, watch movies, or people that know about like crime and forensics, you know that when a traumatic event has happened and you're trying to get witness testimonies, a lot of people are not able to recall details of the events they just witnessed or even the faces of the people, the perpetrators, or even the victims. Why? Because the trauma was so much for them, and that's the body's way of reacting, right? The body tries to repress those details so that the person can just forget about them and move on with their life, or emotionally detach themselves. They don't have the normal reaction, right? Someone could witness an accident here, and then they just feel numb throughout the day, and they go home and they just slump on their bed, and they wake up the next day and they start crying, right? Because it takes time for their body to process what they have just seen. Um, yeah, so it's important when you notice that you're experiencing any of these symptoms immediately after, or 3 days or 1 month after a traumatic event. It's important for you to seek help, because if you don't, it could lead to PTSD. And the last one here is somatic symptom disorder. Here, there's an excessive focus on physical symptoms like pain, fatigue, weakness, and it could cause significant emotional distress and affect our functioning, often without a clear medical cause, right? So here, the person has intense physical symptoms. There's some intense pain or intense fatigue that you can't just get yourself out of it, right? Um, Yeah, so it some of the symptoms are persistent pain. Some people experience constant persistent pain in certain parts of their bodies, right? Like your waist, even though you work out, you've taken drugs to help, you fixed your lifestyle and everything, you still feel that pain. It could be because of a significant stressor that keeps triggering that pain, right? There's also shortness of breath. You find it difficult to catch your breath. Somatic stress disorder just happens, it just deals with our physical manifestation of perceived stress. That's just what it is, right? There's also a lot of, basically all the symptoms you face would be physical, physiological, would have to do with your body, not just psychological. There's also the health anxiety. I don't know if anyone knows any hypochondriacs around them, right? And what that even means, what it means to be a hypochondriac, right? How do these people behave? I want to hear your ideas. Put it in the chat box, right? But it's basically health anxiety, excessive worries about falling sick, and then they even start to manifest symptoms of the sickness they believe they have, whether it is real or not, right? So that's one of it. So it affects people who internalize things so well, right? People who can convert their psychological stress into physical symptoms, because you feel very, very stressed, and you're already feeling the symptoms of the psychological stress of symptoms of stress, right? Like difficulty sleeping, trouble concentrating, and then certain people tend to internalize this and then convert it into physical symptoms. So you say because you are stressed about a recent life transition, you start having lots of cramps and diarrhea or nausea in your stomach. You just develop a kind of condition that you don't even know where it comes from, and it's so difficult for you to manage, right? And it affects women a lot. It often begins in adolescence and all of that, right? So there's an excessive health seeking behavior where the person believes that they are going through some severe physical illness that needs instant treatment. And so these people find themselves in the hospital, in clinics, always online, Googling signs and symptoms, what drugs to take, treatment for whatever they believe is happening to them. But that's just a physical manifestation of the stress that they are facing, right? Yeah. So I think this is the last type of stress here, right? So if you've enjoyed this session so far, I need your reactions. I need, put it in the chat. Let me hear your thoughts, the questions I asked. If you feel like you understood them or you have something to say, I would really, really love to hear your thoughts, right? So let's do a group activity where we're going to test if we've actually learned something today. And it's a case study of Alex. Alex is a second year student, right? In a university, just like you, right? Could be a graduate student, you can just like try to understand it in your own way, right? So, but since midterms, he has been experiencing stomach knots. That's a feeling of tightness in his stomach, and he's only able to get 4 hours of sleep, and he has stopped attending his favorite football club. He feels heavy and believes that he will fail his degree despite having a B average. I hope we're able to see my screen and see. Okay. So, let's look at this case. I want everybody to contribute. I want us to be able to put it in the chat box what we think. I want us to act like just here and try to figure out what is going on with Alex, right? So, Alex experiences stomach knots, tightness in his stomach, right? He has poor sleep. He only gets 4 hours of sleep at night, and he has withdrawn. He has stopped attending his favorite club. He feels heavy and believes he will fail his degree despite having a B average, right? So what do you think? I have some questions here, right? Can anyone, you can just put it in the chat box, although I would allow us to speak after. What symptoms would you say from the scenario described here and what Alex is facing? Imagine Alex is your colleague, your classmate, your friend. What symptoms would you say are physical? What symptoms would you say are cognitive? And what symptoms would you say are behavioral? Remember that physical symptoms are things that manifest in your body, right? Like feelings of pain, fatigue. Cognitive symptoms could be loss of appetite, irritability, being unable to focus. Behavioral changes could be, withdrawing from your activities you loved, stop going to school, stop, doing the things you usually do, right? So what would you say, which symptoms would you say are physical, which symptoms would you say are cognitive, and which symptoms would you say are behavioral? We've talked about them. Next, based on what we just discussed, right? All the five disorders we discussed, which one does Alex seem to be heading toward? It's not a diagnosis, right? It's like, just what do you think from everything we've learned today? What do you think Alex could actually be going through, right? And why does Alex think he will fail? I mean, we can see here that Alex actually had a B average on his exams. But why do you think Alex believes that he's going to fail? So I want to see, you can raise your hands if you have any answer. Oh, so many hands. Ha 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 ha. Let me see. I want Alvin to speak just because her picture is so lovely. I love your smile. So Alvin, go ahead and speak.
Oh
Or
my God,
maybe I
thank
should
you so
unmute.
much.
Unmute.
Good morning.
Okay.
Good morning
Hi.
and good
Good
morning
morning.
to everyone. I'm sorry I can't put on my camera because my internet is not stable. Thanks for appreciating my smile. I actually raised my hand for a question, but it doesn't seem yet to be the time to ask the question I want to ask. So maybe I can just hold on, except you give me the go ahead to go forward to ask what I wanted to ask as question.
Okay, just hold on a bit. We want
Okay.
to we want to help Alex right now. So
Yes.
Ismail, if you want to go.
Yeah, thank you. I'm grateful, Mrs. Success. Actually, I have a question too, but I would like to answer the question of Alex because I can see Alex say you like him so much. Yeah, actually, from the scenario of the presentation you show us, I guess from the perspective of Alex, I guess it's a generalized anxiety disorder. So what do you think? With my answer? Hello? Can you hear me? Oh, she's
Yeah,
unmuted.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Can
you
you hear
now.
me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. So there's some questions we're asking. Which of the symptoms would you say are physical, cognitive, or behavioral? Um, yeah, if you can see the questions. But I
Mm.
like that, right? You just picked a
Yeah,
particular disorder.
yeah, actually it's behavioral. Yeah. But though The typesetting is not both, so I can't see it properly, but I guess it's behavioral that are connected with a general anxiety disorder.
Okay. Okay, that's really nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does Sum Sum want to speak? I think his hand is raised. You can go ahead.
In my side, I think it's not important. I just put my comments in chat.
Okay. Does
I
anyone
don't
want to
say
go?
that's it.
Okay. So let me just read from the charts. My screen looks. Okay. Someone says. Okay, Soon I can see your response here. Okay, so Arlene says a behavioral symptom is he stopped attending football club. Yes, that's correct, because we mentioned, I basically just broke down what physical, cognitive, and behavioral symptoms could look like. And yeah, he has withdrawn from the things he previously enjoyed. That's a behavioral symptom of what Alex is going through, right? Stomach knots physical. Yes, that's a physical manifestation. He's experiencing stomach knots. That's tightness in his stomach, right? Another one says behavioral disorders physical. In fact, it's really generalized anxiety disorder, because he's going through almost all the symptoms. Chi, okay, Dr. Chi, because you basically told us everything here. So that's really nice.
It looks like her connection froze. So let's wait just a second. I see Michael, you put your question or comment into chat. Let's wait for Success to come back. Yeah, keep writing into chat. We have lots of good comments in chat. I wish I could pause the the recording, but I can't. Success, are you back? Can you talk? Success Smith, are you here? I see you here. Hmm. You can't unmute yourself? Here, let me try to mute you. I can't even mute you. Because I see that your microphone is already active. Aren't you co-host? You're still co-host as far as I can see. You might have to reconnect. You might have to join the meeting again or refresh the connection. Yeah, now I don't see her. She disconnected. I don't see her in the list. Maybe she's down here. No. No, I do not see her. She's not. Her, nope. I'm looking, but I do not see her reconnected already. So lots of good comments. Job says 4 hours of sleep is cognitive. Oh, here she is back on. Let's reconnect Success Smith here. Success Smith, can you go ahead and activate your microphone now?
Okay, can you hear me now?
There we go. Yes.
Oh, great. Great. I'm so sorry. I think my other device just got disconnected.
It's the internet.
Yeah. Dr. Lambert, I put in the slides in the chat, so would you mind sharing your screen just so we can finish with the scenario and just get it done?
Well, with the time that we have, I would suggest just go ahead and answer questions now, and then save the rest of the presentation for your next class.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, I'm loving the comments, right? So let's just answer this question.
Which question is it?
Can you hear me?
Well, I'm not sure. Were you talking there?
Okay. So yeah. So let's just get to it. So first thing is, if you can read the scenario described, Alex is stuck in a kind of negative feedback loop, right? Let's consider it again. Alex is a second year student, meaning he just finished his first year of uni, right? And he just wrote his midterm, meaning that the semester, I don't know, ideally there are 2 semesters. So let's say that's for the first semester. It means that he's just getting into his second year and he's just taking his midterm exams. He has been experiencing stomach knot. So a lot of people put in that stomach knot is a physical symptom, which is excellent. Give yourself a shout out because that shows you're paying attention. He's been getting only 4 hours of sleep. I don't know where someone puts in what that is, right? I'm trying to read the chat. I know someone puts in an answer, but I can only see Steven's question here. Oh, shoot. Okay. It also says that he has stopped attending his favorite football club. He feels heavy. He believes he will fail his degree despite having a B average, right? So here we have a cognitive symptom, the behavioral symptom. He has withdrawn from the activities he used to love, his favorite football club. He has, stopped that. He feels heavy, right? That's behavioral. He believes he will fail his degree. That's like excessive worry, despite a physical a counter what's it called? Information in reality. Like he's passed. A B average is good, right? But he, even despite seeing this, he's still really, really scared, still excessively worrying and all of that. So in this case, he is catastrophizing, meaning he believes the worst of the situation, despite being presented with, a good physical alternative in reality, right? So his brain keeps telling him that he has a B average, and like it keeps telling him that he's failing. So that's a cognitive distortion, right? Physical symptoms, stomach knots, biological symptoms, or what's it called? Difficulty sleeping, behavioral withdrawal, which is quitting football. It shows that his stress bucket is overflowed. He feels so stressed, he's unable to function the way he normally would, right? So it's appears to me, even though some people put in GAD, it appears to me that Alex might be experiencing an adjustment disorder with anxiety. Remember how we just talked about GAD? So yeah, if you mentioned GAD, that could be partially right because there's some anxiety. But remember that generalized anxiety, like the name implies, you're worrying about so many things, multiple things. You can't figure out one particular thing that you're worried about, but you feel excessively worried about so many aspects of your life. But in this case, his worry is specific about his grades or about his school life. So I believe that Alex is having an adjustment disorder because he just resumed the new session after going through the whole first year brouhaha, getting to the second year, trying to write his midterm. So things are still kind of relatively new for him. He's still finding it hard to trust his ability to adjust to the changes and the transition he's currently making in his life. So I don't know if anybody got this answer correct. But even if you didn't, it's still great. If you said generalized anxiety, it's still great because it means that you're thinking in the right direction, right? So let's just quickly go into how to manage some practical tips for managing stress. So earlier on, I asked what everybody does, and most people just said they unplug, they stop working, they rest. They get, I think we're expected to have 7 to 9 hours of sleep as an adult per day. I don't know if everybody actually gets that, but ideally you're supposed to get good rest to get up to that number of hours of sleep per night. I'm trying to get my slide up so that you can see it.
Do you need to have your slides up there?
It would be good to have. It's just the last slide, I think. But since we're short of time, let me just run over them, right? So, in psychotherapy, anyone who has been in therapy or has worked with a psychologist or any wellness coach in particular, I know one thing they would say is, practice progressive muscle relaxation, right? Progressive muscle relaxation is a technique, when you feel, especially when you feel physically tense, you are able to also tense up your body, put some pressure on that tension, and then release the area that you feel that tension on. Progressive muscle relaxation is just like a technique we use when you feel overwhelmed stress or overwhelmed anxiety. You get yourself into a peaceful, calm situation to be like just put yourself in a seat, putting yourself on your bed or in your comfort zone and tensing your muscles, tightening your fists, your legs, your muscles in your sides and your back, stiffening your body for a few seconds and releasing it gradually. You could even start with your jaw. For some people, when they feel stressed, their jaw tightens or they feel aches in their jaw. You can try to stiffen that for a few seconds. Practice deep breathing and release that. Right? Remember in the last class, we talked about mindfulness and we had like a live practice on how to, have a mindfulness exercise. So it's basically the same thing. You're doing a lot of deep breathing. You're getting yourself in a comfortable situation. You're tensing up the muscles, especially when you're feeling pain in those muscles. You tense them up and you gradually release them. There's also something called the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. When you feel overwhelmed, you find it difficult to concentrate, to focus, you're highly irritable, sit yourself down and just do this exercise. It just means that it's like 5-4-3-2-1. So you identify 5 things you can see, right? Right now, I can see a desk, I can see my laptop, I can see my colleague, I can see the air conditioning, I can see some books. You list out 5 things around you that you can see. You list out 4 things around you that you can touch. I can touch my desk, I can touch my book, I can touch my pen, I can touch my laptop, I can touch my colleague or my course mate, I can touch my mom or my sister around me. You list 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, right? You can even hear some silence. I can hear some silence. I can hear the ringing of someone's phone. Basically, you are trying to unplug from whatever it is that's making you overwhelmed, difficult to concentrate, or making you very, very stressed, and bring yourself into the present, right? Remember, mindfulness is being aware, being present. With the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, you are being present enough to identify 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, right? And the reason why you're doing this is, like I said, you're unplugging, you're being present in the moment, and you're trying to activate your other physical senses to kind of, distract you from the overwhelming thoughts or overwhelming situation. So 2 things you can smell. I can smell my perfume. I can smell the freshness of the flower on the desk. That's something, right? And I can taste. What can I taste in the air? Please, who can tell me what they can taste right now? Right? So you can taste the sweetness of a drink you just had, the plainness of the water, the coolness of the water down your throat, right? You unplug, you bring yourself to the present, and you activate your senses to keep you grounded. So please let's remember this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique. Another thing you can do is these are just some cognitive strategies, right? You try to reframe your mind. Stress often comes with a lot of cognitive distortions where your mind catastrophizes. It believes that there's an impending doom. There's like overthinking, hypervigilance, and things like that, right? But in this case, you are able to check the facts and you reframe your mind. You do like a personal debate and say, hey, why am I worried about my grades, right? What was my last grade? You bring in the facts. You don't talk with like your emotions. You talk with things that have happened, right? With the facts. You're excessively, or Alex in this case, is excessively worried about his grade. But the fact is, Alex in his last grade scored a B average, right? So he did well. So why is he worried? It will make more sense if he's worried about getting less than a B average, right? Rather than failing the exam altogether. So you check the facts, you check reality, and you kind of counter that and say, hey, my mind is worried about this, but in reality, I have achieved this before. This is my line of achievement, or this is what I know I can do based on XYZ that I've done in the past. So instead of being worried, questioning myself, why don't I focus on the path of success, of doing things well like I've done in the past, and focus on that instead, right? You can ask yourself, is this thought a fact or a feeling? Is it real? Right? Is this feeling real? Is this worry real? Or am I just even stressing myself? Right? Another thing is you challenge those negative thoughts. When your mind says, oh, if I miss this deadline, what if I miss this deadline? What if it doesn't happen the way I planned? Right? You interrupt yourself and say, what if it does? Right? And what is the most likely outcome? You can be realistic and say, hey, I know that I'm not 100% prepared for this presentation, but at least I can still score a C, and that is good enough. And you resolve it and say, okay, no matter what happens, you score a C, and that is good enough, and that's your target, right? You challenge your negative thoughts, you resolve it and stick to something that helps you, right? There are also lifestyle and behavioral strategies, like I mentioned before. Aiming for 7 to 9 hours of sleep. When you sleep, our brain washes away metabolic waste, right? It also helps you relax and get rid of the overwhelming thoughts you've had, right? To ensure that you protect your sleep. Yeah?
We're running out of time, so we'll have to close the course. We'll have to close the class for the day.
Yeah. Let me just add one last thing, right? Dr. Lambert, sorry. Set boundaries, right? As adults, we should be realistic about what is feasible, what is possible, what we want to happen, and what we don't want to happen. And we should be able to plan, stay disciplined, and set boundaries. Boundaries about what is allowed, boundaries about at what point you feel stressed and you need to unplug. You don't have to wait to do 10 hours of looking at your laptop before you unplug. No, you can set a boundary that after working for 3 to 4 hours, you take a break and you stick to that boundary. right? You see, doing things like that, practicing things like that, they help. You don't have to do it every day because change is repetition, right? You can just have it in mind that, oh, when it comes to my studying, I study for 2 or 3 hours at a time and I take a 15 minutes break in between, and that helps me deal with the stress. And you stick to that. And also know when to seek support. If you feel overwhelmed, you feel like you cannot debate yourself out of your worries, or it's affecting your life, affecting your relationships, something you can't manage, or you're having thoughts of self-harm or doing something really outrageous just to deal with the stress you're feeling, that's the sign that you need to seek help. So speak to a counselor, ask for help, speak to a psychologist, reach out to Dr. Lambert. And he will, help you, or those kind of people will help you. Just know that you can't handle it alone, and you shouldn't. There's help out there. Be willing to seek help in order to help, the situation. Yeah, so I think that's it from me. Thank you so much, everyone.
I'm
I
glad you were
really,
able to
really
fit
love
in
this
that last
session.
point about setting boundaries. That's really important.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, can I take questions? Is there time?
No, there's no time because we're about 15 minutes over time, I think. So I would say at this point in time, you can put your email into chat, and if the students have questions, they can email you directly.
Okay, I'm putting that
Please.
in. But I'm loving the questions. I'm loving the suggestions. I think I put
I think we
in
just see
the
the
slide.
beginning. Did we just see the beginning
Let
of
me
your
check.
email?
Yeah, I'm typing it.
Okay.
But for the presentation, I see someone is asking. Please check the chat. I put it in. You can just download it and read it at your leisure
Yeah,
time.
it's best to get the presentation from the student portal because then you can actually access the links to get course credits, and you can also see the video again. So here we have your email in chat, smithsuccess2021@gmail.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so if anybody has any more questions, there's the email. You can email directly to Success Smith with your questions. Okay, that'll do it for today. Success Smith, thank you so much for this great class.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks, Dr. Lambert. I hope you learned
Barthélemy,
something, no matter how
Barthélemy agrees
little.
too. Has great
Practice.
in chat.
Lovely.
Okay, I think that'll do it, everybody. Have a wonderful. These are the time for like vacation and other things like that,
Yeah,
holidays.
celebration. It's Christmas.
So yeah, everybody have a wonderful time with your celebrations. Time to be with family and friends, and to celebrate the change in. Let's just say, how do we say it? Because it's international, right? These are international holidays. So everybody enjoy your holidays to your fullest extent, and no stress. No stress.